Originally, this sermon this morning was not the sermon this morning. From the time that I planned the sermons for the year, going back to late last year, I had planned for this Sunday to be an invitation song sermon. We're preaching from the songbook all year long, and I thought, well, we ought to preach a few invitation songs, otherwise it's really a missed opportunity. So I do have another one that I'm going to do later this year, but I ended up changing my mind as preacher's prerogative, and I wanted to talk to you from Ephesians chapter 6. This morning. You can already tell, based on the picture behind me and the reading that we just had from Casey a minute ago, you can tell where we're going with the sermon and the song that we sang just a second ago as well. But I'll bet you if you've been a churchgoer long enough, and it probably hasn't even had to be that long, that you have heard sermons, plural, on the Christian armor. Rarely will a preacher go even a short career and not preach on the Christian armor. You would be derelict in your duties if you don't, on occasion, on multiple occasions, if your career lasts long enough, go back to Ephesians 6 and preach on the text that we're going to study this morning. But this text has so much more to offer than what is the typical Christian armor sermon. The typical Christian armor sermon has a little bit of introduction and then dive right into the 6 elements of the armor/weapon. And each one of those 6 things is its own point, and we talk about the Christian version, the worldly analog that it has. We go back and forth for a few minutes and then hit each one, just check the boxes, 1 down to 6, and then invitation song, and we're done. And it's the same sermon, and I've heard that sermon from dozens of preachers, dozens of times, and they're all a little different because all preachers are a little different, but they're all the same sermon. And I feel like the ground is well treaded. I do not want to talk to you this morning about the Christian armor. It's going to come up. We're going to talk about it a little bit, but the point of the sermon is not the Christian armor. The point of this sermon this morning, the reason we are studying this material this morning, is because I want to talk to you about the Christian soldier. I want to talk to you about who you are that's inside that armor. Why you wear that armor. Why the Apostle Paul, as he was penning his letter to the church at Ephesus and Laodicea, and it circulated all over that region, why he had in his mind to basically close that letter with an illustration describing and comparing the Christian, the benevolent, peace-bringing man of Jesus, as a soldier. What was on Paul's mind that made him do that? And if that comes out beyond just, here's an element of armor, here's an element of armor, here's an element of armor, don't forget the weapon, the end. There must be more to it than just that. It's not just an illustration for illustration's sake. So let's consider this morning not just the elements of the armor, but the person, us, wearing that armor, the Christian soldier. To do that, we first of all have to consider the analog. Because I don't know if it was a Roman soldier or a Spartan soldier. It may have been a Roman soldier that was on Paul's mind. Certainly that was the default soldier of the day. When you think of a soldier and you want to compare a person to a soldier and you need to describe a soldier, in the mind of everybody, they would all have instant familiarity with a Roman centurion. So it very well may have been that that was the soldier on Paul's mind. But I just wonder if maybe it wasn't the case that he had in his mind a Spartan soldier. Ephesus, if you know your world history, was a territory controlled by Sparta for Sparta's entire history, and then eventually it came into be Roman possession. But Ephesus' history is rooted in Sparta, and if he's writing this letter to that region, that would be a soldier with which they would be familiar. And it's interesting to think about the Spartan soldier if you want to compare a worldly soldier to a Christian. Because a Spartan soldier, just to illustrate what kind of average Spartan soldier we're talking about, a Spartan soldier was a fighter from birth to death. Sometimes that death was on the battlefield at the age of 22. Sometimes it was at the end of their life at the age of 72 or something. But from birth until death, they were bred for battle. And when I say from birth, I mean it. I don't know how familiar you are with the history of the Spartan army and the way that they emphasized military commitment from their young men. But from birth, that Spartan mother has her newborn baby boy ripped from her arms and taken to a monument, for lack of a better word, on Mount Tegetus. And that baby is left alone all night long, a newborn in the elements. And if that baby dies, it doesn't matter if the baby dies of exposure, which is most certainly a possibility, or if some wild animal came and took it, or if 1,000 other things happened that caused that baby to die. If the baby dies, not a tear is shed by the leadership who put that baby there. In their mind, that was culling the herd. That is a weakling that didn't need to be in the Spartan army. We don't need someone who can't survive one night in the elements. If that baby, by hook or by crook or by the providence of God or whatever it was, if that baby should survive the night, then they would go back and retrieve it, and they would deem that child fit and worthy to be a Spartan soldier. They'd go back to his mother for a short time, but then almost immediately thereafter would begin training in the most simple and rudimentary childlike way imaginable, up until the point where they would go through actual rigorous training, military strategy, combat technique, and so forth. They would be a student from that point on until the age of 21. And even within that time frame, as more recruits are coming in, I say recruits, as more babies who survived, who grew up, who were forced into the army, came in to that camp where they are doing the training in that area, those soldiers to be, who were still students of the craft, would take under their wing these new recruits, for lack of a better phrase, and begin to train them the things that they've learned. It would be this cycle of student teachers, student teachers, student teachers, ever learning, ever teaching, ever learning, ever teaching. Those who are above you teaching you, those who are below you, you teaching them. Until the age of 21, at which point you enter the army full time. And if there's no war, and there usually was, you're still ready to go if there is one. And if you are attacked, you're at the front line. And if it's time to attack, you're at the front line. And if the army outnumbers you 20-1, you're at the front line, and you fight. And you fight until the last. And you might be the last, and you're the last, and you'll fight. And you would usually die. You'll not make it to the retirement age. But if you did, if you were just the greatest soldier ever, or it was just a peaceful time and you managed to make it, at the age of 60, that Spartan soldier, if he survived that long, would be given land and title and a stipend and provisions by his government for a job well done. But it wasn't actually a job well done, because a Spartan soldier never retires. He just gets to go home and relax a little bit and be the reserve. Not the front line, but the back line. And if the front line can't do it and the army starts pressing in and it's danger time, it's go time, that Spartan reserve picks up his weapon, hobbles himself to the line, and fights once more. And it probably would kill him, but he'd made it that long, so he would fight. From birth to death, a Spartan soldier was bred for battle. The Apostle Paul, a student of history, a scholarly man, knows that. Knows his audience knows that. And I think used that as an analog for the Christian soldier, a people who likewise are bred for battle. From birth, we are cast into the elements. We are forced to survive in a world that is trying to kill us. And it's not wolves and nature like a little baby and the physical elements would have to contend with. No, ours is a spiritual battle, a point that we're going to make many times in this sermon. And we are faced with a spiritual world that is trying to kill us. Except, unlike a Spartan soldier who only has to spend one night in the elements, we have to spend our entire lives in these elements, constantly surrounded, outnumbered by a world that hates us and is trying to destroy us. From our new birth, we enter into a world that is desperately seeking our destruction. And then what? We begin learning and growing and growing and learning. And along the way, new recruits come in. New people are born. And what do? Do we leave it to others to teach them? No, we teach them ourselves. We students who never stop learning, unlike the Spartan soldier who stops learning at 21, we continue learning ever more. And as new people come in, we impart whatever knowledge we have we can give to help them to survive this evil world. It's not just left to an elder or to a preacher or to a deacon or to a really good teacher. It is for all of us to teach the next ones who come up as we continue to learn from those who came before us. A student turned teacher. But we are also full-time soldiers. We are at the front line. We are the first resort. We are not in the back. We are in the front. Now, we have a great champion who has already won the war. But I'm not talking about a war, and Paul's not talking about a war. I'm talking about a battle. The war is already over. What we have to contend with in this world is just a protracted battle of New Orleans. If you know your War of 1812 history, the war is over, but they didn't get the memo, so they got to fight this last battle. And that's the world. It's just this prolonged battle after the war's already been won by the Lord. Yet we, the soldiers, have to keep fighting because the other guys are coming at us. And so we need to be prepared. Full-time soldiers. But unlike the Spartan soldier, we don't go home yet. We don't get to go home and relax, and then maybe if they need us, they'll call us. No. We are full-time soldiers until death. And it is only at death that we go and relax. It is only at death that we put down our weaponry. It is only at death that we get our house and we get to relax forevermore. Until then, we keep going. There's no reserves in the army of Christ. There's no reserve soldier of Christ. Listen to the other things that Paul says along these same lines. As he's writing to Timothy in 1 Timothy 2:2, he tells him to endure hardships as a good soldier of Jesus Christ. Endure difficulties, endure uphill climbs, endure a world that hates you and wants to kill you. Endure it with the mindset of a soldier that must press forward. No matter how many bullets are flying around you, they must press forward. No matter how many sharpened spears and arrows and swords are aimed at you, press forward like a soldier who does not quit. Paul says to Timothy in the same book, just a few chapters later, he tells him to fight the good fight of faith. What kind of fight is it? To say it again, and I'll say it again, our enemy is not the world. We're not fighting a worldly fight here. It's a spiritual battle. It is a good fight of faith, because our agenda is not to kill. Our agenda is to save. So fight the good fight of faith, Paul tells to Timothy, and Paul also lived by. Because there are no reserves. You fight until death. And as Paul was himself nearing his death, he was about to go to his execution. He was about to go to the block where his head was going to be removed from his body. His final words included the phrase, "I have fought that good fight, and now I'm ready to lay down my head and pick up a crown on the other side." I'm ready to be done. He may not want to, and if he should get a stay of execution, he should live another year, fine, Paul will preach another year. If he should live another 5 years, he'll be a soldier for another 5 years. But this is the end of the line for Paul. And so his attitude is, I'm a soldier who's fought to the end, and now I get to go home. We are soldiers of the cross. Greater, more reliable than the greatest of all Spartan soldiers. Now with that in mind, once again open your Bibles to Ephesians chapter 6. Now let's start in verse number 10. Let's read the text that is so familiar to us. Ephesians 6, starting in verse 10 and reading through verse 17. Paul writes, "Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of His might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil," the King James says. "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore, take unto you the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. Stand therefore, having your loins girded about with truth, having on a breastplate of righteousness, having your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Above all that, taking the shield of faith, wherewith you shall be able to quench all the fiery arrows of the wicked one. And take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God." A text we know very well. I'll bet you if you're old enough, you've had a VBS where there was talked about, and you saw the elements. You got to see the visual of them. I want you to see beyond the elements to the person wearing the armor. I want you to notice a couple of key thoughts from this text, and the thoughts that I'm going to draw to your attention are not righteousness and faith and truth and salvation. Not those words. I want you to notice something else. Start with the word stand. How many times in that text, as you scan over it once more with your eyes, does Paul say to stand? Standing therefore, having done all to stand. Stand, stand, stand. He says multiple times in that text. The word means to plant your feet unmoving, to keep your place. In the Greek, it is stenai. Yeah, stenai. To plant your feet, to keep your place, not to move. But in the same context, he also tells you that in this conflict that you're in, you must withstand Different word. Similar, related, antistenai. Antistenai, withstand. Listen to the word, anti. Anti is against something. Anti is opposed to something. That's anti in the Greek. Antistenai. This is a person who stands opposed. You're not just stubbornly planting your feet in defiance to something good. You're not doing that at all. You are planting your feet in defiance to something evil. You are not just standing in arrogance. You are not standing on yourself. You are standing in opposition to something or someone that is pressing against you. This is not just you with your flag planted on a hill. This is you in the trench and the army is charging. I guess it wouldn't be a trench. This is you on the battlefield and the army is charging for you. And Paul says every instinct in your body is going to tell you, turn and run away. You're outnumbered. Look how many people there are. You stand because you are opposed to everything that army stands for. You stand opposed. Withstand is the way it's translated. Something else I want you to notice from this text is who the enemy is. Who the enemy is not. We are standing opposed not to people. We stand opposed to the devil. Unfortunately, the devil has many people in his grasp. The devil has many soldiers in his army. And you will have to find yourself, and you will have to be on occasion confronted by not a guy in red spandex with a pointed tail. You will have to face flesh and blood human beings. But as you look at those flesh and blood human beings spouting the devil's lies to you, see behind them to the vigilante hanging behind them, to the evil one hanging behind them, to the devil, to the adversary, to the demon king hiding behind them, the mouthpiece of them. It is not your enemy is the person, it is your enemy is the devil feeding the person those lies in the first place. We are fighting the devil. So you cannot win this war with a weapon of the world. You cannot win this war with words from the world. You're only going to win this war with the spiritual sword. You are only going to survive this war with spiritual armor. You, soldier, are fighting a spiritual enemy. You are fighting, King James says, the wiles of the devil. Your Bible might say schemes or tactics. It is in the original language, methodios. Listen to it, methodios, method, the methods of the devil, the methodical nature of the devil's scheming. See, the devil didn't just stumble upon you and think, that's a good prey, I'll attack him today. No, the devil has been watching you. The devil has been observing you. The devil, who is very old and very smart, and do not underestimate him, has been observing what makes you a good target. And he is applying against you very certain methodical weapons to attack you, weapons which may not work on me, but he also knows me. So he uses different weapons on me. We are fighting the schemes of the devil. The word methodios comes, its original idea from, think about the story of the prodigal, not the prodigal son, the Good Samaritan. The story of the Good Samaritan, this person who's just traveling along the road and then he's pounced by a mugger who was just hiding in the shadows. That idea of hiding in the shadows to pounce is this word. It is not a person who is, poor and just trying to feed his family and falls into a life of crime and is a tragic villain. No. This is a person who is deliberate, who is contemplative, who is planning, scheming, thinking, desiring to snatch you. That's the devil. And we are fighting that wily, scheming, tactician of evil. But how does he fight us? What does he do with his methods? What do they look like? See, the devil's hiding in the shadows. You don't see him unless you know where to look. What you see is this world around you. What you see is a sphere of influence he has created to affect you and tempt you and draw you away. What you see are the lust of the eyes. What you see is the lust of the flesh. What you see is the pride of life. What you see is the attitude of, if it looks good, do it. What you see around you, what you experience around you, is the attitude of, if it feels good, do it. Feels good, do it. If it looks good, take it. And what you see is the attitude of, if you want it, if you like it, have it. If it's good for you, then it must be good. Even if it's bad for you, and you don't know that, or if it's certainly bad for everyone else, if it's good for you, then have it. If it looks good, it's yours. If it tastes good, feels good, it's yours. You deserve it. That entitled attitude, that worldly, selfish, pleasurable attitude, this attitude of consequences be damned, if I want it, I'm going to have it. And that's the devil's lie. The devil's lie is consequences be damned, but it's never the consequences that are damned. It's always the soul. The consequences are the damnation, the condemnation. We are fighting an enemy who has perfected the way to attack you without ever being seen, to shoot arrows without ever you finding the bow. That's our enemy. We are fighting the devil. Ergo, we are not fighting the world. Go back to the text. Look at Ephesians 6, verse 12. What did Paul say? For we wrestle not against flesh and blood. We do not spar or struggle or contend with face to face, eyeball to eyeball, nose to nose. We are not up close and personal with an enemy this close to our face who is fleshly, who is of the world. And that's a scary thought, because I know what people are, and I know what people are capable of, and I can imagine what a person might do in certain situations. So if you put in front of me a person, I can at least strategize against a person, but I am not fighting a person. I am fighting a spiritual being. And I don't mean spiritual in the sense that we use that word to mean holy and good. I mean spiritual in the sense that he has no body. We are fighting an ethereal being. We are fighting notions. We are fighting concepts. We are fighting ideas. We are fighting lies spouted out by a liar content to hide behind, content to stay in the shadows. We're not fighting the world. But it feels like it sometimes, and that's another one of the lies. And we spend all of our attention and we spend all of our focus trying to attack people and trying to hurt people and trying to prove our point to people, that we miss the general behind that soldier. We miss the one who is directing that person, and we start fighting the world. But we wrestle not against flesh and blood. We wrestle against principalities, powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness, against non-fleshly depravity that exist in, the King James says, high places. Maybe it's in the heavenlies in your Bible. It just means in the spiritual realm. We are fighting things that we can't grab with our hands. But I can grab the neck of a person who is speaking those lies, and then I can be a murderer. But I can't grab the neck of the devil. I can't grab the lies of the devil. I can only hear them and be tempted by them and watch as someone else is swayed by them and struggle what to say to unsway that person and to feel the frustration of a spiritual soldier. Because a physical soldier, it's easy. You just stab the guy. He bleeds, he falls down, he dies. This is a spiritual war, and it can wear you out. The temptation, therefore, is not to fight a spiritual war. The temptation is to fight this person right here in front of me, to hurt this person right here in front of me, to attack this person right here in front of me. And it doesn't do any good. We're fighting a spiritual war. Non-fleshly depravity. In Matthew chapter 25, I'm not going to read the whole thing, verse 41, Jesus paints a picture of judgment. God separating sheep from goats. God extolling those who will feed him when he's hungry and give water to him when he's thirsty and visit him when he's sick and so forth. And then rebuking and condemning those who did not do those things. And the eternal destination of those two sides is on display. And on the one hand, they enter into eternal life. And on the other, he says to them, "Depart from me, I never knew you," to the place prepared for the devil and his angels. Go be condemned to the place that was never meant for you. Go be condemned to the place that was not designed for you. The place that was designed for you, these people are going to enter into. But the place that was not designed for you, the place that was designed for the devil who lied to you and who tricked you and who convinced you to go that path, there you will go and spend eternity with him. Except you can't spend eternity because it lasts forever. You will exist perpetually with him, the devil and his angels. About a month ago, I went to Lepanto up in northeast Arkansas, and I preached in a gospel meeting. And they gave me a sermon topic they wanted me to preach, and I never heard it put this way. And I absolutely adore this title, and I'm going to preach it to you probably sometime next year. The title of the sermon is Meant for Heaven and Not for Hell. It's a very obvious statement, but when you put it that way, it really resonates. You are made in the image of God. You were made, you were purposed to live with God forevermore. And hell is the one place in all of everything that God is not. He has made it to not be there. You are meant for heaven and not for hell. Hell was meant for the devil and his angels. And yet if you listen and you are misled, hell is where you will go. And I have to keep that in mind as a soldier of the cross. That person that I might want to contend with, that I might want to wrestle with, that I might want to fight with, is not my enemy. He's the one I'm trying to rescue from my enemy. He's the one I'm trying to save from that damnation, to pull out of that eternal fire. We're not fighting the world. We're fighting the devil. And we are equipped for the fight. Do not underestimate your enemy. He is very old. He is very smart. He is very patient. He's very tactful is not the right word. He is full of tactics. He is coming after you. So it's daunting. Don't underestimate him. He's a lion, Peter says. But you are equipped to fight him. In what way are you equipped? Look at 14 and 15 of our text. Paul says in my Bible, stand therefore having. Stand therefore already having on. The devil is attacking. Good thing I'm half dressed is the idea. You are already wearing these elements of armor. The moment you become a Christian, these pieces of armor are put on and they stay on no matter what. Don't ever let your guard down so much that you take these elements off. These elements become a part of you. Having what? Your waist wrapped in truth. Having righteousness covering your body. Having your feet prepared with sandals that go take the gospel. Your shoes are always on. Your shirt is always tight. What was the other one? Your belt is always strapped on. No matter what, you are always wrapped in truth. No matter what, you are always covered in righteousness. No matter what, you are always going with the gospel. No matter what, you are a truthful person. It's not just you carry the truth. It is you are a person of verity. It is you are a person of honesty. It is you are a person of reliability because you live by this. But the person should see this by seeing you. Truth is who you are. Truth is why that person that you want to reach with the gospel will listen to you in the first place. Because you do something the devil does not do. You tell the truth. Truth is who you are. Righteousness is what you do. And we don't think of righteousness that way. We think of righteousness as who we are. But John writes in 1 John 2, he that does righteousness is righteous, even as he is righteous. Righteousness is right doing. Righteousness is going the right way. Righteousness is what you should do with your actions through truth. And it frustrates me, for lack of a better word, and I can offer other words, but we'll stick with frustrates. It frustrates me when I hear my brethren just kind of ho-hum say, well, you know, we're all sinners. We're just going to keep on sinning. Stop sinning. Please. I know it's hard, and I know you're going to slip up, but stop making sinning your habit. Stop making sinning your hobby. Stop making sinning your lifestyle. You became a Christian. He died so you would stop being a sinner. He died so you could be a saint. And you can't be both. Pick a lane. It frustrates me to no end when I hear my brethren say, well, you know, we're all sinners, as if they're preemptively excusing themselves for what they're going to do tomorrow. And that's exactly what happens. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, I'm a sinner. Well, eventually, I keep telling myself that, so I'm just going to jump off and sin. Or, radical idea, you could say, I'm righteous. I'm a saint. I'm set apart. I'm not going to sin. And I know I'm going to mess up. But my mindset is, my goal is to be a saint, to be set apart from that lifestyle. I'm going to do righteousness. So if you're struggling with this idea where you think, I'm going to sin, I know it's going to happen again, so I am a sinner. No. You are a saint set apart, but you're not perfect. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to be encountering a fork in the road. Stop telling yourself that you're always going to go left. Go right for a change. And tell yourself you're going to go right for a change. And you might realize one day that you're now in the habit and the hobby of going right all the time. And occasionally you'll be misled. And occasionally you'll go left. But do righteousness. Make that your hobby. Make that your lifestyle. Do righteousness. Because if you do righteousness, you are righteous, even as he is righteous, John says. And finally, strap on your shoes. And as you go, encounter those along the way that you can tell. Encounter those along the way who are lost, who are adrift, who are wavering, who are seeking, and help them find. Not just those Not just your enemies who are of the devil who are trying to hurt you, but those who are just aimless and lost. Your feet are constantly ready with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Constantly you are prepared to tell the good news. Gospel's what you use. That's what you have on all the time. But in addition to that, Paul says, above all, taking. Above all, look up and see your master is holding something for you when the moment strikes to grab hold of. When the need arises, you'll take this one, because you're not always going to be under fire. But when you are under fire, what must you be ready to equip immediately, to put on immediately? First of all, a shield to withstand the attacks of the devil. And your shield that you will pick up when the devil starts firing is your faith. But my brethren sometimes get this backwards, and we think we have to always be on the offense, defending the faith, contending for the faith. That's Jude 3. There's a time for that, but Paul does not say here, defend the faith. Faith is not what you're defending. Faith is your shield. Faith is what's defending you. Faith is what you're holding up. Faith is what's absorbing what the devil's firing at you. And there's no shame in hiding behind your faith. That's why your faith is bigger than you are, because Christ is bigger than you are. So the devil's going to be firing from all angles. The Romans, not to mention the Spartans before, but the Romans, they had two different shields. They had the small round shield for hand-to-hand combat. Then they had the big, tall, kind of oval-shaped shield. And when the army would advance forward, they would link up their shields and the oval shields, and just it would be this impenetrable wall of shield that could not handle it. It could handle and withstand any kind of fire from any direction. Well, let us link our shields together and let's withstand whatever the devil fires at us, because every now and then he'll stop and he'll re-strategize and he'll replan. In that moment, you can set your shield down. But when the moment comes that you're under fire, you need your faith held up. You need your faith in front of you to come between you and the enemy. It's not just your general everyday faith that you always have. This is a special, I trust that God will get me through it kind of faith. Be ready to take that up. And above that, in addition, he says, and take, receive. Here it is for you to have. Take it from your master. Take what? A helmet to put on your head. A helmet to ensure your victory. A helmet to assure your victory. Because you can take an arrow right here and you can keep fighting. And you can take a blow right here and you can keep fighting. And you can even take a shot to your foot, and it's hard, and you can hobble forward and you can still keep fighting. But if you get hit right here, if you can't see to fight, you can't fight. And if you can't think to fight, you can't fight. And if you're knocked out unconscious on the ground, I promise you, you're not going to be fighting. You must wear a helmet. And what is, in Paul's mind, the analog of the Spartan helmet to the Christian? It is your very salvation. But not just the fact that you're saved. It is the assurance that you're saved. It is the knowledge that you're saved. It goes over your head as you press forward into the battle and you're in the middle of the darkness and the devil's firing from all angles. Remember, this war is already won. I'm going to make it. And even if I'm gunned down on this battlefield, it's an express lane to Jesus. I'm going to be okay. Go with the insurance of your salvation as you fight. Go with the assurance of your salvation as you fight. Put it on your mind, put it on your head, and press on. But don't forget to take your weapon. Take your weapon. Take your killing thing. What's your killing thing? Your weapon is not a sharpened gladius. Your weapon is not a sharpened spear. Your weapon is a spiritual sword, one which can pierce the dividing asunder of soul and spirit and joints and marrows. It can cut, in other words, Hebrews 4:13, it can cut in between, beyond the physical. It can cut into the spiritual. Your weapon is the Word of God. But it's not a weapon that is used, well, it is, unfortunately. It's not a weapon that's supposed to be used incorrectly. See, when you fight a physical war, the objective of a physical war is to kill those guys over there. All your guys are lined up over here, and all their guys are lined up over there. There's 500 over here, and there's 500 over there. And I'm going to start shooting over there. I'm going to try and take out as many of those guys over there until they have so few that they think we can't win, we must run away. Listen, I got news for you. The devil's not going to run away. That's not that kind of war. That's not how it works. I mean, he will flee from you when you draw near to Christ. I know that, but that's not the illustration I'm making. His army is not going to retreat and leave you alone forever. He's got 500, you've got 500. Your objective is not to kill those guys over there. Your objective is to convert those guys over there. Because if he's got 500 and you've got 500 and you kill them, you've got 500, he's got 499, but he's always going to be having more. More's always going to be coming to his side. He's a good liar. But if you take that 500 and you convert one, now he's got 499 and you've got 501. And you keep converting. And all you're doing is you're drawing away from him souls to be added to Christ, to be added to his army. And until you see it that way, You're going to see all those 500 guys over there as your enemy. And your mindset as a soldier is going to be to defeat them, to stop them, to silence them, to kill them. I don't want to silence the world. I just want the world to start telling the truth. And so I want all those people who are spreading the devil's lies to start repeating the Christ's truth. So I'm not going to try to silence them. I'm going to try to convert them. Because the more passionate they are, well, listen to the man who wrote this. How passionate was he to kill Christians? And what did he become? God was not content with killing Paul. God was content with converting Paul. So your objective is not to kill them, it's to convert them. Funny thing about that, though, converting them requires killing them. Because what happens when you become a Christian? You put your old life to death. And then you bury it. And then you rise to become a new person. You are a Christian soldier. Your enemy is not the world. Your enemy is the devil. Your enemy is the influence of the world, which is the influence of the devil. Your enemy is the power of the world, which is the power of the devil. But the people in the world are the people you're trying to reach with the gospel. See them as people dying that you can save, that you can rescue, that you can cure with this right here. This is your spiritual weapon, one which does not kill, but which brings life. And if you are here this morning and you're not a Christian, you're not my enemy, but you are going to be condemned. You are going to be destroyed if you don't turn to Christ. I'm not asking you to turn to me. I'm asking you to turn to Christ, who died to set you free, who died to save you. Take advantage of that salvation by believing Him, by repenting of your sins, by turning your mind and your mouth to Him, by confessing His name before others, and then by putting your old self to death, burying it in a watery grave, leaving those sins behind and rising to walk in a new life. Can we help you do that? Are you a soldier who stopped fighting, who stopped defending, who's left a gap in the formation of our shields? Pick up your shield again. Put on your armor again. Continue the fight until death again. If we can help you and encourage you in some way, let us know how right now. Please come as we stand and sing.